Welcome to Zen Footsteps. My podcast is designed to invite you to explore new perspectives and challenge the way you see the world. Through engaging conversations with thought-provoking guests, we're going to delve into the idea that you can transform your thinking and inspire personal growth. From redefining success to uncovering unconventional paths to fulfillment, each episode is a step towards expanding your mind and embracing the journey of discovery. So join us as we walk alongside innovators, thinkers, and change makers who can help you see life in a whole new light. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Zen Footsteps. My next guest is Dr. Lydia Johnson. She's a chiropractor and she's got 24 years in healthcare. Lydia was inspired by her father's recovery from a brain hemorrhage, and she dedicated her life to healing. Now, after struggling with the chronic pain and weight gain, a chance encounter led her to chiropractic, and this has literally, she says, changed her life. A neurodivergent mother, she's built a thriving clinic while raising a child with autism. Even after severe spinal injury, she chose healing over surgery, proving the power of resilience. Lydia's story is one of perseverance, transformation, and saying yes to life. Lydia, hello, welcome to Zen Footsteps.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. We spoke to a mutual friend of ours, Danny, about being on. So let's dive right in, because when I read your bio that you'd sent to me, it was obviously a lot longer than I've just said. So we're going to go back to a few points. So your journey into healthcare started at quite a young age. How did your father's condition, what happened? Tell me the story around that.
So my dad was an incredibly fit man. Like, he would swim 100 lengths, then teach people sub-aqua diving, then do another 100 lengths. He was a builder. We had horses. He was such a big, vibrant, sporty character. You know, he used to lift me up on his shoulders and the same fit as a fiddle. He really was. So it was a massive shock to see somebody of such a pillar of health, like instantaneously have a brain hemorrhage. He was only 44, so I was 10. So obviously I didn't understand what that meant at 10. You know, I don't think I understood the repercussions at that stage. But we were welcomed as children because he was in hospital for so long. We were welcome to go to the hospital and see him. And without being too graphic, it was a long time ago. So there's lots of people in cages and, because they weren't allowed to move their head. And there was, I would say, a dozen people in hospital beds. And although obviously there was the natural fears, it's my dad, is he going to recover? I just remember being so fascinated by what was happening, and I'd chat to any doctors or nurses that were around. And I just remember asking all the time, why is my dad getting better and nobody else? What's different? Why do some people heal and why don't they? Because basically they were all, fit young men. There were a couple of seniors there, but yeah, I was just so inspired, and I just, it was a long recovery, and when he got home, he still had to do quite a lot. But considering it was, from what I believe, a massive brain hemorrhage, and he had to have plates put in his head because they had to really open his head up and everything. The only thing he forgot was people's names. Now that, to my dad, was very frustrating because he's a real people person. He knew everybody's names. But, with good spirit, he got through it and just learned to make him a joke of it. Hi, I'm Jerry, who are you?
But is that when from, you know how they often say that people become I know my case definitely, and other people I've talked to on my podcast, is about how they become involved in healthcare as often after some sort of tragic accident or something. Was there a light bulb moment for you at that point when you thought, hold on, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think I've always been naturally inquisitive about like a range of healing. And my mum worked in a adult education setting where there was like lots of Reiki and massage and aromatherapy and we had kind of raw milk growing up. We're in a quite a rural community. So I think there was a lot of conversations around health and healthcare and how diverse it is. So I think I was just on that cusp of learning about it. But yeah, I do vividly just remember questioning, like, why do people get well? It never entered my head, why do people get sick? It was always, how do people get well?
It's funny, isn't it? Because I know that from as chiropractors, doctors, everything, there is a point when we sort of question how things work, and there's a lot of psychology now, isn't there, as to the power of the mind over matter, as they say. So you were about what, 17 when you had that eureka moment? Because this obviously you were younger when this happened to Dad, or was it younger than 17?
Yeah, it was literally when I was 10, I sort of started questioning it and things like that. And, I was always into my science in senior school and things like that. So when I was 17, I went to work at the hospital. And yeah, that was a kind of really interesting because obviously I was a healthcare assistant, so I went along and I helped people do the little things, brush their teeth, comb their hair, and I just noticed that when people had a bit of their identity back and a bit of humour and they felt like themselves a bit, how much it perked them up, and again how holistic, how working together just made such a difference to people.
And was it at that point, what point led you to chiropractic? Because you obviously had your own challenges from your bio. We touched on it briefly, but
Yeah.
what were the sort of challenges? Talk me through from Dad to how you got into chiropractic.
So I was really, really fit child. We're a fit family. We just, everything we did was movement and we ate really well. But we were also into quite risky sports, falling off motorbikes, horses, kayaking. And then I think I worked a lot and throughout then working at the hospital, I then became an audiologist. So I tested people's hearing and balance. And so I had to travel a lot. So I would basically ruin my body at weekend doing risky things. And then I would sit in my car and drive for up to 5 hours a day and pick up heavy equipment. And so I started with back pain. Didn't really think anything of it because I was just so used to injuring myself and getting over it. But over about 12 months, I really became in such excruciating pain that I couldn't even change my radio channel in the car, which to the average person means nothing. But if you're sat in your car for 5 hours a day and you literally can't bend forwards 10 centimeters without fire going down your leg, it has an impact. And I think I'd always been able to kind of eat a lot and exercise a lot. And I think I carried on eating a lot, but not exercising. And so I put nearly 8 stone on in weight. And throughout that journey, I was talking to GPs, surgeons, physios, just trying any medical route basically to get well. And I was always told I was too young for back pain. So I used to make the same joke, well, tell my back that. And then they would always say, well, if you lost some weight, and I'd be like, yeah, but I was an athlete. And I've injured myself and the weight is a symptom. And I tried every diet plan, everything going. And by that point, I was quite I was quite grumpy. I think I was like 23, and the lady that I worked with, she said, "I love you dearly, but I cannot put up with you moaning anymore. I've booked you in my chiropractor." And I said, "Well, why have you done that? There's nothing wrong with my feet. It's my back that's it."
I've been asked it so many times. I'd say to somebody in a chiropractor, and they go, "Could you just have a look at my feet?" And I go, "What are your feet for?" They
Yeah.
think I'm a chiropodist, right? Yeah. One of the things is when I'm reading through your bio that I wanted to ask you about was there any point where you made a connection between emotion, your dad, and your back pain? Was there anything at any point that you made that connection?
I would say that's when I started down the path of chiropractic. Now, I wouldn't say I was quote unquote a good patient. I was like, I'm going to carry on doing everything that you've told me not to, and I'm just going to turn up and pay my money. My chiropractor said, if you just made some lifestyle changes, and I would just come back with, "You're getting paid, you're enabling me to carry on, let's just not discuss it." But I think just that drip feeding of chemical, physical, emotional just started to unwind, where it all came from, really.
It's the
Yeah.
root of chiropractic, isn't it? It's D.D. Palmer's initial 1895 innate intelligence, and with my patients, I really try to say I don't heal you. It's the body heals and all of that kind of stuff. And I think most chiropractors have a similar story of something that's happened to them. So was it a question where you, like with me, I had migraines. My migraines were sorted by a chiropractor, and I thought, I want to do this. I left nursing a little bit like you. We came from that NHS background, right?
Yeah.
Because I thought, wow, this is really powerful. So what point within the treatment, or what happened that you went, do you know what? I want to do this.
I think it was that the change of kind of growing up in quite a holistic household, holistic community, but then spending so much time in the hospital with my dad and then working there. I think I just got so taken over to the other side of the paradigm where you're very much looking at sick care and what can we do to not be sick. And I think now I've got that balance where I'm very much swayed towards eat well, move well, think well, do everything you can. But I'm also very open to each person's their journey being their health and their choices. And I think I'm really confident working with people in a multidisciplinary way. Whatever they want, I'm there to support them.
I totally agree. I'm very much, you come along the journey with me, but if you don't, that's fine. But I'm not responsible ultimately for your health, and constantly sort of say this. So, a little birdie, Danny, uh, who's been on my podcast, and I think I just released that episode. That's quite a good one. He was telling me about how you got in to chiropractic college. It wasn't quite straightforward, so you can blame him for throwing you under the bus on this one. So tell me the story.
So I think, I'd not always been very good in education. And in one way, I was very good at learning. I loved learning. I still do. I'm so passionate about learning. But I had this burning desire to become a chiropractor, but I just knew I couldn't do it. I was just like, I'm not smart enough. I can't. I'm not academic. And then one of my friends actually applied for me. So they brought me a letter to say, I've got you an interview. And I said, oh, well, there's no point in me going because I'm not going to be able to learn it. But it's a weekend away in Bournemouth. I'll head down. I'll have a chat with them. I had done some studies by then. Obviously, I'd become an audiologist, and I had some BTECs and things like that. But they were very much education that I would do at work. So I was familiar that if you worked hard, you would get there. Whereas to become an academic was too much for me to ever dream of becoming. But I went down. I had a chat with them. And I was really honest, and I said to them, I really want to do this, and I will promise that I will work as hard as I can. I can't promise that I will be able to do it, but I promise I'll give you everything.
I would have taken you straight away on that, just because that's what it's about, right? It is about hard work and dedication. And I still have I remember talking to a friend of my wife's about this, about how you find that when you say to people, how long do you reckon I train as a chiropractor, and people go 6 months, maybe a little bit more. They don't understand we're a 3 to 4 year training, and the neurology that goes in, and everything else like that. And it sounds like you had what most people have, which is imposter syndrome, and
Yeah,
this, with
yeah,
really thinking that I'm not good enough. And I happen, I'm going to put my hand up to this. I still to this day get it. If I
yeah,
get a particular patient that I'm struggling with, I've come home several times over the years. I've been in practice 30 years, and I've come home so many times going, "Oh, I've had enough. I'm throwing the towel in. I don't want to do this anymore." Because sometimes you get patients transferring stuff onto you that's not yours, or blame you, and you can't really, you've just got to take it on the chin, right? So so do you still get the imposter syndrome, or have you moved beyond that?
So I think for me, what helped, so it actually took me 7 years to graduate. It took me a long time. Um, it was, I think once I was in third year, I kept failing exam after exam. And for every hour in university, I'd come home and I'd do six. But I kept failing. And I had huge pride. There was no way I was going to discuss it. I was just going to work harder. And then one of the teachers came up to me and he said, "What's happening? Why are you failing?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, I don't know." He said, "You stand up, you come to every lecture. If we ask you a question, you can answer the question and more. We know you know it. Why can't you pass the exam? What happens?" And I said, "I don't know." And they referred me to an educational psychologist. And from that, I was diagnosed as dyslexic and dyspraxic.
Wow. And so no, and you've gone through the whole of life not knowing that?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So I'm really glad that I didn't know that in the first place, because I definitely wouldn't have turned up on the course.
Do you not,
But
do you not find, because I was going to say, because one of the things I find fascinating, I'm slightly dyslexic, and I don't know, I've never been tested, but my sister who works in that area says you definitely are. So I take it from my sister. Never argue with a sister, right? Especially when you got five of them. So one of the things that it always fascinates me is that this label on dyslexia, in terms of it's a negative, but yet I find there are certain things, like for example languages. As a dyslexic, you'll know that sometimes we almost think in pictures sometimes, you know. And yet when it comes to languages, I take a language and I put a word and a picture to that, if it's German, English, whatever, and I remember it. And I almost do think that sometimes maybe this thing that we say is a negative is actually a positive. Because I
yeah,
see a lot of people who are incredibly dyslexic. I mean, Richard Branson is a classic. I mean, apparently he was in a boardroom and they had to explain the difference between gross and net. And they had to take him out and show him pictures of fish being caught by a net, And I think he was the one that coined, if you're the smartest person in the boardroom, you're in the wrong boardroom, right? And it's interesting because I find the chiropractors, or even I took my driving test 3 times, okay? But they're the best chiropractors. It's like, I don't know, it's like they've had to work that little bit harder. And yet I went to chiropractic college, and some of the people that just sailed through aren't chiropractors to this day, And I'm sure when you were training, maybe there's some that, did the same.
Yeah, that's so true. And I immediately I started looking up what's the benefits, what's the benefits of being dyslexic, dyspraxic. I now know that I have some autistic traits and some ADHD traits. Sorry, typical. And again, I very much looked up what the positives were. I had a special teacher that would come in because I couldn't understand the question in the exam, and therefore I couldn't even begin to answer it. So that was the first stage of understanding the question and then being able to give an appropriate answer. But I love the fact that I can look at a person and I can imagine every cell in them three-dimensionally.
I'm exactly the same.
It's beautiful.
It is. I'm the same. I used to, without sounding too woo-woo, um, put my hand on a patient and close my eyes. It was like in front of my eyes, I'd see an X-ray of the spine, the rotation, and often my wife will say to me, "Can I just use your chiropractic fingers to, unpick something or whatever?" I can. It comes with the whole thing about there's a book called the Empath Survival Guide. I think people that are neurodivergent, definitely there is that real sensitivity. We have this ability to be people when we're talking in crowds and be with people. They think, "Oh, you're really confident," but we have this switch where right, that's it now. I've got to go and crash. And I learned with my wife who used ADHD, and never used to understand why we got in the car and I'd sit in the car and she'd have to go from the car. She would have to go and do something with the laundry and turn the light switch off. And we could never just get in the car. And when she was diagnosed, I went, "Oh, that's why. I get it now. I get the." So let's imagine that nobody knows, what dyslexia is and dyspraxia or any of these. Explain in as much layman's terms, how would you explain what they are?
So I'll use an example, that a situation I've literally been in, is that I will read an email, um, and I will guess what it says. I will very quickly scan and I'll pick out a few words and then I'll make a presumption. I'm not always right, which is why I can use this example. I'm now really confident that I can. I tried to read the email, it didn't make any sense, so I just rang them and I said, "Oh, I'm just reading the email. Could you help me with it? Because I'd like to help you." And sometimes I'll mention that I'm dyslexic, or sometimes I won't. But now I've got the confidence to be able to just get around the situation. I think with dyspraxia, that's more patterning, that's more routines and rituals. So I never knew. This is really embarrassing, but I'm willing to share it. So I never knew when I was a kid why I'd quickly get ready and then I'd be like, "Oh heck, I've not put my underwear on." And I get really frustrated. I was like, "Right, I'll have to take it back off again." Because I just thought about like the outerwear. I didn't realize like which order to do things. And so I've got a lot of systems in place. So at home, we have the same system. You take your shoes off at the front door, your coat's there, the keys are there. We have cupboards labeled. I'm in the clinic, everything gets put in the same place, back in the same place. Like order, I think, makes a massive difference to then being able to use my energy efficiently to help people.
Yeah, I think order generally. I mean, I know that I like, if my wife says to me about, say, the car needs cleaning, it's really not a good idea to say that to me because I'll get up and go and do it. It's like I have to complete the task, And I know within chiropractic, it's I like, it's I can't leave a task half done, and I think within practice it's like that too. I want to complete it, and sometimes it's a bit frustrating because you're treating a patient and you think, "Oh, I wish it was a half an hour more." I can work on them, and it almost feels undone. So how have you taken that and into your clinic, and how you help patients with it? How's that become positive?
So there's probably two answers to that question. Like coming back to sometimes I describe myself as a light switch. So I'm either on or I'm off. So when I'm in clinic, I actually work quite long hours. So I do put breaks in. I put breaks in to do stretches, to have a 10-minute walk around town and things like that. But I'm very much on for that day. But then I have scheduled in my diary time off and away from everything. And I've found that that then gives me a much greater capacity than trying to do a little bit every day. So that's definitely something that has changed in my life and my clinic as well.
Do you do any sort of have you ever found meditation or mindfulness? Do you do any of that at all?
Yeah, I do. So I have a very quiet routine in the morning. I get up early. I try and get up before everybody else. Um, so I have quite a set routine and just that quiet time. I grab my coffee, I sit down, and so it's not a formal meditation, but it's just that kind of body scanning, checking in with myself. If anything pops into my head, I just write it down, but then I come back to myself and I just make sure that I'm settled, I'm calm, I've switched on, and I do that every day. So regardless of it being weekend or not, and I'm very much the same at night. I have a I have a ritual where I kind of wash my face, and I always say to people, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It's little bits of self-care and having that routine really to make it automatic.
It's interesting. I have a lot of patients who've got fibromyalgia, so I've got a big following from that fibromyalgia community. And often a lot of patients who've got fibromyalgia talk about that as well, funny enough, that routine and how important that is. And we've also got a friend who's got a child who's got dyspraxia too. And I've noticed that as long as there's routine, this kid's great, absolutely fine. But out of routine, real meltdown. So that must have been quite tough for you as a kid, because do you look back and think certain things, you go, wow, that's why that happened?
I think it really helped that we had animals growing up. So I think there was a lot of routine of kind of taking care of them, getting up in the morning, having that quiet time, that movement, but being calm around the animals. And we would repeat that in the evening. And we always sat down for dinner, things like that. So I think naturally I did have quite a lot of routine in my life and a lot of movement breaks, and we didn't have the technology I think that's bombarded onto people now. You know, I could just go and stroke my horse for an hour, something like that. So I didn't really. I knew I was quite quirky as a kid. I was laughing today to my partner, and I said I never thought it was strange that I had a suitcase with 115 trolls in it. I used to carry around. Just everyone was like, "Oh, it's just Lydia in a suitcase full of trolls."
That's fantastic.
And at school, I had my favourite bush that I would go in and read. Again, I never felt different. Like everyone
Yeah.
just, I was like, oh,
But
I like screaming and running around. I like sitting in my bush.
no, but it's funny because you know how when you say certain things and it triggers. I remember being at primary school. Do you remember those pencils you'd get with the little fruits that go at the end of them? Do you remember those? I had one of those. Well, I had a few of them for some reason, probably like you and your trolls, right? I had these little pencil ends, and I remember sitting in primary school, just completely focused, these making little noises and climbing the bark and the tree with them. And the teacher looked over at me when all the other kids were in a circle, and she said, it's okay, we don't smell. You can come over here. Actually, I was just happy to be left alone. She totally didn't read me right. I was like, I'm in La La Land, just leave me, you know. And it's interesting that, I mean, I've written books, I was an actor, I was presenting, I've done all these things. I never would have thought as a kid I'd be able to do any of those things. And so when you're in practice and you get somebody comes in who is neurodivergent, for example, is it like an automatically a kind of an affinity that they have an understanding that they go, oh, this person gets me?
So I try as much as possible for every appointment to be about the person that's coming to see me. And particularly on the initial consultation, I always say to people, I've got two ears and one mouth. Like, I want to hear your story, but often something will come up. It might be chronic pain, it might be weight, it might be, oh, I had a lady, and she said, I'm desperate for something to happen, but I hate being touched. You know, I treat most challenges with humour, and I did giggle and I said, oh well, that's kind of what we do here. But then I did go on to say that actually, I am in a neurodivergent community, and when I explained to her the different pathways of soft touch, firmer touch, pain, I get my diagrams out, show people the anatomy. I think when you take away some of the mystery of why it happens, then you can overcome that challenge, and the person knows that I understand them, and they know what, potentially why it's happening. And I think it is then, I want people to feel safe and in the right place.
Yeah, it's a real challenge sometimes. I had a very prickly patient first time, and I thought I'd done something wrong or whatever. And then the second time they came to see me, completely different, because it was that meeting of minds, and that sort of, okay, this person kind of gets me. Because I think that the mistake a lot of people make when they go into practice is a lot of people actually, when they're in pain, they're afraid. And they project the anger onto you, or whatever they do. So I think that that's also something I've had to learn, and that it's like, I suppose, like any animal. If an animal gets used to you and trusts you, but sometimes it takes a while for that to happen. So I find this, especially when people are neurodivergent, is the sensitivity to everything, to sight, to touch, and all of that can represent such a challenge. And sometimes, again, I just want to know if this is the case with you. You can I don't know, you can not think you're a failure, but you can think, I can't help this person. There's any point where you get sometimes and you go, I'd love to, but I can't.
Yeah, I've learnt over time. I used to just work with everyone. Like everyone, I was a rescuer. Anyone that came my way, I would say yes. Yes, I will do my best. And I think I have changed a lot. So, first of all, when I meet somebody, it is just to meet them. There is no expectation that they will work with me, and vice versa. I give people permission to leave. I'm like, let's see how let's see if we can work well together. And it's absolutely fine if you don't think I'm the right person for you. I will still help to refer you to we've got lots of wonderful people in the community. But equally, I always say to people, I'm blunt with love.
I think that's brilliant. I think it's a fantastic way to do it. I mean, I often say to people that I'm going to see them a few times. I'm not somebody who keeps getting them back and back and back. I'll see you a couple of times, and then after that, you will pretty much decide whether you want to carry on with treatment. It's almost like a kind of reverse psychology, right? Because I don't know what it was like in your training, but there was very an American model where People go, oh yeah, I went to see a chiropractor. You want to see me 3 times a week, and I don't work like that. That's just me personally, and I'm always interested talking to chiropractors. Do you find that your chiropractic treatment that you do now, because mine, this is the case with me, is nothing like when I originally graduated?
No, it's completely different. And always want to know what people want from me. I'm very goal orientated, and I do perceive my clinic as a sanctuary, as a community, a safe place for people to come into. And I think that's only happened since I've been able to have my own clinic. So that doesn't mean, like, I have worked with the most wonderful chiropractors and clinics that have helped me become who I am as a person as well as a chiropractor. But the way I work, I'm open plan, so I've got 2 benches, and that for me helps me with that time. I want people to come in. I say to people, if you look in reception, everyone's got their legs crossed, they've got their mobile phones out. I was like, can you believe like how difficult it is to adjust somebody like that? So people can come in and they can relax down and take gravity off and unwind and have that opportunity to have that brain and body connection, and it not just be about, oh, the next thing and the next thing. I don't think we give ourselves that opportunity often. I do now, but I didn't do that. And so I bring that into the way that I adjust. I give people that time to unwind, and then I'll come to them, and that has really helped with that flow as
I
well.
think it's very important. I mean, my dream, and my wife and I were talking about this, if you had the money, as we all dream about, I would love to open a healing center. But a couple of things I would have is, let's say you've got a case come in, we'd sit down, chiropractors, doctors, GPs, we'd have a pathway, but no one would be turned away. That would be my dream, that like it wouldn't be about money, rich, poor, doesn't matter. Because the problem I find, I suppose, we're in private healthcare, aren't we, as chiropractors? My slight concern is if that we ever became NHS, we would lose some of that innate intelligence because it would become 8 minutes per patient is what the average GP in the UK gets, and I think that's the thing. And I love talking to other chiropractors because we all have such incredible ways of doing things. But I think the wounded healer is the way I would describe anybody who gets into this. We've all been wounded somewhere along the line, whether it's in childhood or whatever, and we bring that in to clinic. And ironically enough, I think we attract, it's quite funny, the clinic I work in, sometimes we have this thing where we've got, I like emotional patients, right? Because I think to some degree they're more real. I don't mind if somebody, became a joke that, come in to see, go and see him and you'll end up crying, because so it's like, but I always like, I had someone today literally walked in and within, I could have counted 3 seconds, and this poor soul absolutely burst into tears. And I met them human to human and said, hey, come on, it's going to be okay. And I think that that's sometimes within medicine that is lacking. We need to see the person as a person and not just a kind of a condition.
Absolutely. And again, when I meet somebody for the first time, I do say to them, I want to hear your story. I see thousands of people with headaches, knee pain, elbow backs, or I see a lot of people for sports performance. But everybody's life is so different. Everybody's journey is so different. Everyone's values are different, and their experience of healthcare or their knowledge about sick care and wellness care, and also their goals. I had a chap who was absolutely elated, and he came in and I said to him, oh, how can I help you? And he said, I feel old. I was like, okay. And I feel like I do crack a lot of jokes. And I said, oh, which bit feels older than the other bits? I said, because technically every cell in your body is, every part of you is the same age. And he said, I just feel old. He said, and I know you've helped my friend. So I don't know, 3 or 4 adjustments. He came in absolutely elated. He said, I've put my socks on for the first time after 15 years. And he said, I just couldn't believe it. He's like, I'm enjoying my job more. I'm sleeping better. I've got more energy. I'm less cranky. I've made some life decisions now that I can do more. I'd like to do more. I'm going to play some more golf, and I'm reducing my job down for 4 hours a week, and I'm going to go and do that. And you just wouldn't believe how far-reaching the chiropractic experience is when people come in. Sometimes people don't even know why they're there. They just know that things could be better. And I have friends that are physios and working in the NHS, and as an audiologist I've worked privately and NHS, and I really feel for them. They work so hard to become who they are, and then unfortunately they don't have the freedom that we have in the private practice for being able to help people.
I think especially with physio, because I've said this in other podcasts, that I have friends of physio in private, and it's a completely different experience to NHS. When you go to the NHS physio, often they'll say they go and they just give me a piece of paper and say, go and do some exercises. And that was always my fear with chiropractic if it ever became NHS, is that, we would be so busy. I mean, I reckon the maximum amount of people I like to see in a day, it varies from chiropractor to chiropractor. My follow-up treatment's always half an hour, is 15. That personally for me is my threshold of what my body can take. And I think that's probably, again, because of that neurodivergent, you know what I mean? The energy that you're having to absorb. And I wonder how doctors deal with that, because my wife's, she's a senior lecturer at a university hospital, and she's a senior paramedic. And I've seen so many doctors get burnt out. And I think you have to have a stop there,
I have GPs come to see me for chiropractic care. I have people that work in an ambulance crew, fire, police, real frontline people that never get the good bit. They turn up when things are going badly, but they never see that person again. They don't get that feedback that we are lucky to receive, that people are getting better, they have made changes. They don't get the happy stories. They don't even know whether they've said the right thing or done the right thing. They're just constantly hoping they've done, and that must be so hard.
I think so. And we saw it in lockdown and COVID a lot more, I think. And I know my wife tells me the story of she went out to a farm somewhere, and a little girl, or I think been a car crash. And I think unfortunately the mother in the car crash had died. And but to this day, they still get cards from grandparents, I think, who brought her up, saying thank you. And you're right, we have the luxury of time. That's the first thing. And do you work on a chemical, physical, emotional basis? Do you incorporate nutrition as well?
Yeah, so I'm very much so I give people information, but then again, they've got permission to do what they want. Like I said, I was not the best chiropractic candidate at all. I was like, I'm going to carry on doing what I'm doing. And so I just meet people where they're at the time. So I have got a background so I did Reiki, again, before I'd even found out about chiropractic. I trained as a hypnotherapist, a clinical hypnotherapist. I did dry
Same as me.
Yeah, and I don't use any of those modalities currently, but I do think they've given me that well-rounded approach
I think so. I think that one of the things that I find, especially with say hypnotherapy, for example, is getting people just to be in the moment, and actually stop. It's not unusual when I'm doing cranial work, basically for those that don't know, cranial's the head, holding on to it, just doing very gentle movements, and then getting somebody to get into their stomach breathing as opposed to, sympathetic breathing. And often they'll say, I feel very emotional all of a sudden, or feel like crying, or whatever. And that's, again, that's quite something, when somebody does that. You really touch something quite raw. The downside, I suppose, of that is sometimes people don't come back to see you because they've felt, in that moment, something's surfaced from the past that they're not maybe ready to really deal with.
Yeah, and I'm very open. So I know I've quite a few very good therapists, through people that work in trauma release, all sorts of people. I'm naturally a connector, and so I'm really happy again to find the right person for them. I have had people that I've worked with, and I've said, I think we're going to hit a ceiling here. I think that everything you come into me with, these symptoms are messages, and unfortunately, you're not in a place where you can hear those messages or make sense of them. But I think I know somebody who might be able to help you. And I know I can ethically send them on. They will have a free chat with them and see if that works. So
I have the same. The thing is I try to refer people to my wife because she also works with leaky gut syndrome, perimenopausal, menopausal women. She's a health coach as well, which she's set up as a business.
right.
What I find amazing though is they'll come. You ultimately know that's what they need. The chiropractic's not just what they need, and I say, look, here's the information. I leave it up to you, and they'll often sabotage themselves. And you kind of go, why? Because there'll be a reason or excuse. And I think just some people aren't ready. They're stuck in their paradigm of belief,
Absolutely. And I think it's such a challenge, because in order to overcome something, you actually need the energy to do it. I talk about resilience such a lot to people. As you said in my bio, the reason that gets me up and gets me into work, and even on those imposter syndrome days, is because when you can't do something, you lose your ability, your identity. You can lose your friendships. You can lose your job. You start saying no to things, and your world shrinks. And when your world's shrinking and you're in pain, and you can then be depressed or not able to care for yourself, the thought of then going to do something to help yourself, you've not even got the resources or the energy to begin that health journey. And so I often find myself just helping people, just talking about resilience and tiny bits of healthcare. And, you don't have to be overwhelmed with the perfect diet and the perfect health routine. I'm not going to ask somebody with fibromyalgia to, can you just read these 60 books, implement all the nutritional information I've given you, and can we get you running a marathon next year? It's like, no,
It's not going to happen.
no. And actually it would deplete them even more. So it's always about what can we say yes to, what can we help to gather that resilience, gather that energy, so that then your world starts opening up. You can say yes to things, and you can then take that opportunity to do further healing.
I think as well when you have children as well, I think that's for me personally was a big change too, because I saw that if I'm going to expect my children, not expect, but want, should I say, that my children have a particular lifestyle in terms of health and emotion and everything. I've got to be very open and honest with myself as a parent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and that is true. I'm very honest and open, and I do try and act with integrity as much as possible. I say to people, I follow the 80-20 rule. You will see me having my 20%, not great for me, but, it's great in the social side and things like that. And also, my dad actually, he just loves to defy doctors and defy all the rules of life. He actually had a AAA last year. So to everyone, a aortic, abdominal
Yeah.
aortic aneurysm. So the main blood vessel that goes off your heart, it disintegrated, for want of a better word. And so I spent many, many months with him last year, in intensive care and high dependency. And I was like, oh, Dad, you're at it again.
Do you have a question whether your father is neurodivergent? Because just if you said to me, there's this guy and he was a patient, you're talking, I'm going, he's neurodivergent.
I would say so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And what was lovely, I mean, he came out of everything he'd started to do well, but unfortunately 9 months later he did pass. But I was able to talk about it again to help other people. I used to say to him, well, I'm in the hospital, I'm taking the stairs. I'm going to take my lunchbox with me because I know what I'm eating. If I was asleep, I'm going to do my meditation. I've got, I get bored quite easily. So, I'd be kind of reading and just, again, using every opportunity to add into my life and keep myself well. I did have some time off work, but I wanted to be at work. I wanted to be in the community. If anything, although he passed, again, it really strengthened just how incredible our bodies are, what they can go through and how resilient they are.
And
Yeah.
there's a time, right? I mean, my parents are both passed, and there is a time and a season, as they say. And I think I said in a podcast the other day that being born is actually far more dangerous than dying. Dying's inevitable. But being born is not, I'm afraid. And I think that as healthcare workers, we see more of that, so maybe we're more understanding of that. But I think pain is a great teacher. I think about the lessons I've learned in life. I've had some great lessons with great fun, but some of my hardest lessons, some of my most damaging, if you would want, have also been my greatest teachers. And I think that as I've yet to find a chiropractor who hasn't been through some sort of event like that. That's what drives us, is to help other people. So right. So how do people get hold of you? Because whereabouts are you based? Which part of the country are you?
Oh, I'm in Buxton in Derbyshire.
Okay. Oh, right. That's the I pick up with the the accents from. So, and what's the best way to get hold of you? Is it email or what contacts can we give out?
We have an email address, which is hello@buxtonchiropractic.co.uk.
Okay, so that's hello@buxtonchiropractic.co.uk. That's very clever. That's really clever.
Our telephone number is 01298 942 000.
Okay, so if you get a lot of calls from America after this, don't blame me, all right?
Yeah.
Because I've looked at the podcast, it's really funny. There's some places I've never heard of because I get the stats on the podcast. And there's some places I genuinely thought, where is that? Out of wherever, so it's quite funny. So we have a little tradition here, closing tradition on Zen Footsteps. And I pre-warned you of this really, I suppose. But I need a favorite quote. But I want to know why. That's your favorite quote.
So, a quote that I say nearly on a daily basis is that only constant in life is change. And it reminds me that when life's good, treasure it. Just absolutely soak it in as much as possible. Like, just completely embody it, be grateful for it, and just make the most of it because unfortunately, the good times don't last. Um, but I also know on my darkest days, which trust me, we all have, I know that it won't last. I know that I'll have the right conversation with the right person, or something will change. And so I will just sit in wherever I'm at and just say, it's okay, it will change. I think
Yeah.
something will change. You know, I have that hope about me.
Yeah,
That,
I can. It's funny. I can really hear it in your. I can hear it in your voice how
yeah,
you've lived that.
yeah.
You've really lived that. No, thank you for sharing with that because I can feel how that's really. I can see how that's emotionally how that's touched you. I think it's true. I think that life is good and life can be bad, right? But that is life. And as I've often said, this is a university for learning, and it's a tough university, And look, you 7 years to graduate as a chiropractor, and so maybe we've got over 100 years, hopefully, before you graduate from this place, So, which would be amazing. Listen, thank you. I really thank you for your honesty. It's been a very frank and open and honest conversation. I love that my conversations with my guests because I try to keep it just as natural as possible. People get to know you, some of your philosophy, your story, and I'm sure loads of people are going to be really touched by this and reach out to you. So, but thank you. I really appreciate it. I will let you know when this episode goes out, obviously. But
Great. My mum will be really proud.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Take
thank you.
care. Take care.